It's okay to walk around to grab coffee, to grab ice cream, but if you could cease the conversation so we can get down to the final panel. Okay? So, and bear in mind that this is also being broadcast round, so the background noise does impact the video cameras. So Martin Ectors. Thank you, guys. Okay, there we go. So the focus of this panel discussion is telecom application development is changing the world as we know it. So with this panel, we're bringing together the people that are helping telecom application developers do that by adding communications to applications, to services, to business processes, and creating revolutionary experiences. I already mentioned this morning, Airbnb, Amazon Mayday, and basically companies in this space getting bought at crazy valuations, or before they've even really got their business off the ground, getting bought up. The example being Snapchat snapping up AdLive. So what I'd like to do is to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get down to some Q&A, and we'll also take Q&A from the audience as well. So once this panel's done, then it's off for lunch. So we'll start with you, Alex.
I'm Alex Economon, Director of Business Development with Nexmo, a telco API focusing mainly on SMS and voice at the moment.
My name is Douglas Tait. I'm with Oracle. I'm a product marketing manager for service delivery platforms that looks at both the web world and the communications world and bringing that together.
Hey everyone, Jose de Castro, the CTO for Tropo, visiting from San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Luis from Apidaze, one of the 3 founders, and we provide a telco API and WebRTC SDK for developers.
Does it work? Yeah. Hi, my name is Mac Taylor. I'm a consultant with Huawei, and Huawei is particularly interested in the context of this conference on service innovation and encouraging new service creation and bringing that to operators around the world.
Hi, I'm Dinesh Saparamadu, CEO of hSenid Mobile. So we're actually running the similar hack in Sri Lanka with about 100 people starting around this time. And our main interest is actually having our platform to open up messaging, USSD, charging, location APIs, and building mesh-up applications as well as applications that actually provide service innovation for the operators. Mostly, currently, most of our things in the Asian region, but we are also actually getting quite a lot of traction from Africa, Middle East, and other countries.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. So can you hear me okay? There you go. So where I'll start is just with a general question. And again, we can basically take questions from the audience as well. So if you have any questions for these guys as we go through, please just jump in. So I'll just open it up, and anyone just jump in. How are telecom application developers changing the world? I've made that statement, but can you back that up? Anyone want to jump in?
Sure, I can
go for it.
Start. Yeah. In various different ways, right? And of course, even the term telecom, I think, is a little, it's a loaded term these days, right? You know, you think of the telecom industry as kind of a traditional line of business. You know, people mostly, you mostly think of big infrastructure. And of course, that's a big part of what we're doing at this conference is to marry up great ideas with these massive infrastructure investments that carriers have already made for you. But more importantly, I think hopefully what we're trying to accomplish today and what we're already seeing in the market is that it's a bigger idea, right? It's more than just linking up great ideas with infrastructure. You know, at least what we do at Tropo is try to link up great ideas, not just with carrier infrastructure, but also probably their biggest asset, which is, you know, billions of users with a high willingness to pay. You know, every single mobile user is a paying customer. There are very few industries in the world still today where that's the case, right? You know, you look at Facebook, you know, they don't pay. You look at WhatsApp, they don't pay, and they've had to monetize in other ways. I think it's just it's an interesting place to be a developer today. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I think Alan made the point in his introductory remarks that communication is critical to human activity, it's critical to social activity, and it's critical to commercial activity. And historically, the telecom networks have been optimized around two key services, but basically voice and messaging, in a very restrictive and very defined way. But there is a lot more opportunity to build in voice and messaging. First of all, voice on the telecom networks is pretty well ubiquitous around the planet, as is messaging. So SMS messaging I'm talking about. So the idea that as everything moves into software, both on the telecom side and, as it were, on the application side, you now have the opportunity to easily create services for a whole range of different industries, from healthcare to finance to travel, et cetera, and to include communication applications in those business processes. And the ability to do that by opening APIs from the network, essentially messaging APIs or voice APIs, maybe billing APIs, and to build new services that use those core capabilities of the telecom networks, and to include those into new communication possibilities in all these different industries, opens up a huge new opportunity way beyond just the telecom industry itself. So I think this service innovation ecosystem that we're beginning to build here is the first step along that path. And I think everybody here today has an opportunity to get involved in that. And if we look at the evidence of this happening, not necessarily within the operators themselves, but within companies like Tropo and Twilio, Nexmo, Apidaze, and so on, who've actually built, as it were, communication clouds that expose a very simple API that allow developers to easily create applications. Now, those are integrated through SIP and SMPP interfaces at the moment into the telecom networks. But just that alone has shown that there's a big demand from a whole range of different players in different industries for these communication services. So now, how can we bring the lead that's been shown by Tropo, Twilio, and others, how can we bring that to a global scale and then get operators involved so they can distribute those interesting services to their local markets? And I think that's really where this whole thing is going. So at the moment it's global, so we need to take the global idea and then distribute it locally.
I'll give a different angle to that, in that I think what we're seeing here is a major clash of the cultures and the business model and what's coming from the traditional communications network, which we've seen for the last 120 years, and what the internet has brought about on the communications. Now we see so much more internet, as Mac alluded to, around messaging, Facebook, social networking, and then you have the traditional voice, which now that clash of the cultures is starting to open up. And I think this is where we see the big change in that, exposing what's going on inside the core network out to what we see on the internet, on the IT space, is bringing those two cultures together. I still see there's somewhat of a clash, or there's a fight around the business model. In the old world, the carrier basically owned the subscriber and wanted their 100% attention. Now their attention is going to the internet and other means of communications. So now they have to share their subscriber with what's going on the internet. And that opens up the world to us as far as writing APIs, doing WebRTC, and doing other cool things that then tie into that carrier market. Now, does a carrier go forward from here on and still, what's that business model there? Because we see a brand new business model emerging out of the web space. So the world's changing quite dramatically over these next couple of years.
I think, building on what you were saying, it's really about the services. So mobile is just like internet. Until you have the good services, internet didn't take off. So the carriers did a great job at building their networks, amazing, and they're still doing it. But it's difficult for them to, most of the innovation typically comes from startups, from developers like you guys. If you look at a few years ago, you mentioned Airbnb and Uber. They didn't exist a few years ago. Nobody knew them. And they built their services on the internet, on mobile, and we'll see how they also use the telco APIs for that. So I think really it's about the services and not just the networks, although the networks are a part of it. And that's why we work very closely also as Nexmo with carriers.
Okay, I would maybe just like to add that from a developer perspective, what is interesting now, I mean, all the setup is there, and like companies like us or Tropo or others really remove this complexity that makes it possible for developers. We can call them telecom application developers, but they can be all kind of developers, can build applications and new services. I think the fact that it's fast, easy, cheap, open source, cloud-based is also a factor that makes that developers are getting, I mean, that APIs and telecom APIs are getting more and more attention.
Dinesh?
I think the key is to see why is it different now in the last 2 to 2.5 years compared to maybe 3 to 5 years. I think that's one reason why we see that a lot of the whole telecom application development really taking off is mainly because of new business models. Because developers are making money now. I mean, the places that actually we have our platform, developers are actually, not only they're making money, they're setting companies up, and that's really the whole uptake has been that. And why is that? And that's because the platforms have come together now and are making more, much easier for people to be able to not only create apps, but also to go to market and also the whole discovery process. So I think that's where the whole telecom apps have really kind of taken off in the last 2 years, is mainly because of that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dinesh. And I think I'll pick on you again to start in answering this next question. I'm interested in the panelists' views, well, actually sort of examples of some of the new innovative services they've seen built in these communities that are being created or built on telco APIs. I know with the work that you've been doing, there's a vast array. So just interested, especially in the Sri Lankan market, which is a great success case in terms of developers making a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, so I think the key we have seen is people have actually taken what we think, these are simple applications. They have been actually being able to create it and to go to market and being able to propose, especially rural countries, I mean rural areas of Sri Lanka, and this is similarly whether it's in Kenya or in some other places, they're being able to build simple apps and being able to kind of bring that to market, whether it's, I mean, one of the key things that have really been taking off is what's called beauty tips. I mean, it's been, people subscribing to this, and, you get 2 or 3, and, similar ideas that are very small, simple ideas, but they have been able to monetize it and really bring it out into market, where we have seen multiple of these. And now, what we have is we also have what's called a non-developer community that we have been building on top of our developer community. And if you take, I think currently, that part is now it's going to be football, but it's during cricket time. People used to follow people who used to be kind of they think they're idols on this, and then they have been actually bringing some of this content out, and people have been subscribing to this content. So there's I mean, I always say we build a platform, but I think the killer apps comes from these guys who are daily thinking in and out of problems and trying to find solutions. So that's where I think a lot of the service innovation has come, and we have seen our platform growing revenue-wise. It's been growing about 20 to 25% month-on-month revenue growth, which is incredible for some of the operators. And for them, you see that whole peer-to-peer SMS and messaging coming down, and now you actually see this thing, this rest of the things have been taking off, whether it's through your messaging APIs or USSD or your charging, and some of the guys also now opening up the whole charging, the cache APIs up, so now we have actually integrated with M-Pesa and, bringing people to build application on top of that.
And the revenue split for
I think that's the key. That's what I said, the new business model. The revenue split is 70-30, 70% for the developers, 30% for the operators. I think that's where the real change happened once you did that. Now you have guys, who are actually leaving their full-time jobs and setting up smaller companies because now they're actually making more money in this side, because earlier it used to be, you know, more moonlighting and doing it, you know, during the weekends and night. Now they actually are making more money, so people are moving into that.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things I noticed in the deployments that you've had is it's far more egalitarian. It's not like one-hit wonders where you have basically sort of, you know, like Temple Run, where a group of 25 basically dominate. It's far more distributed, so there's lots of developers. That, you know, some of them are like, is it like 25,000 US a month in Sri Lanka?
Correct.
Which is amazing.
Which is huge. I mean, the key is that, I mean, we have some operators, they have launched, for 12 years, they have launched about 87 applications. After the platform was launched, now they have 2,600 applications launched within the last 15 months. I think that's the key.
And it's very local to the Sri Lankan market
It's local, but also these developers are now actually, we launched the platform in Fiji with Vodafone, and some of these developers are actually taking those apps to Fiji now. So actually we have the similar apps, you know, but with some local content in that going across borders.
Yeah. Anybody else got more examples of services?
Yeah, I'll pick on a few people here. The guys from Elerant, raise your hands real quick. Oh, they're all back there. They pulled together some really cool apps around IPTV. And then here again, they combined what was on the web with what's in the network and bringing that together to deliver IPTV out to the network. And they're showing some really cool IPTV stuff. And then Optari, they're down here. They're pulling together WebRTC with billing platforms and OSS platforms and doing that rapid integration. And what's really cool is I see that what they're doing as far as development is down to a matter of weeks instead of months. So I think that's where we see the new world of development around here. Even met my friend from CSC here who's taking the same thing, taking that web-based platform and combined it with a communications platform. And now you can do both things from a web and communications point of view. And so you see some real rapid delivery of new services. And around the world, the exposure of APIs, getting back to the same numbers you see both in Telstra and Hutch3 and others, where they can have third-party developers come in and start writing some very cool applications and bring up revenues very quickly for the app developers.
No, good point. Luis, Jose, maybe some of the innovations you're seeing?
Yes, a lot of innovations. I have too many, so it's difficult to find. I think WebRTC, as I look at Google, is a very has opened a lot of possibilities and lots of ideas and business models on how we can plug this with the carrier environment. Because I think it's interesting with WebRTC is that it opens interest for what is going on the carrier side, because the web developer is going to think about WebRTC services, pure web services. But then what we try to do is to bring like the telecom aspects and to put the products a little bit further. So yeah, we can develop like call widgets that you can put on your websites or apps or whatever. Other interesting things also, like Doug was mentioning, is the rapidity of development. We can talk now to people who have no telecom knowledge, who are in completely different industries. I'm thinking, for instance, of ad networks, and who are not able to handle voice, but just web forms or things like that. And we can bring voice into their business models and develop new product lines. And in our perspective, this kind of companies, like large or multinational companies, maybe would have liked to turn to local carriers to have these services offered by them. But for the time being, they turn to API companies. So I think we have to move in this direction and work closely together also with the carriers so that we can bring new service. I think there are hundreds of new products and services to develop and to create.
Okay. I'd like to take a step back maybe and go back to what's enabling this exciting moment that we're in right now, which is, you guys can access telco networks very easily via an API. In the past, some of you may not know, but you would have to go to a wholesaler or an aggregator, speak to a salesperson, which is probably the last person you guys want to do, and get provision maybe 2 weeks later, negotiate your prices with the salesperson to try and maximize his revenues. After which, you'd get an SMPP account, so you'd have to do it in SMPP, not REST. And then eventually you could begin sending. And oh, by the way, you'd have to do a credit check as well, which if you're a developer, good luck, you know. So nowadays, new business model. I mean, I think that's really the biggest enabler. To give you an idea, I think one of our customers, I think I can mention the name, Viber. I remember, I think we timed from when we saw the first registration to when they sent the first message, 4 minutes. Prepaid, no credit check, no nothing. That's the power that you have at your hands right now.
So I think that's a good point. And I think if you think about the innovations, there's two different business models we're looking at here. One is this kind of global cloud, where one is exposing voice and messaging to applications and websites that enable mission-critical communications, say from Viber for two-factor authentication, or from Google when somebody loses their password, or from Uber because you need to send an SMS to the taxi driver, or from Airbnb because SMS just happens to be the best way to communicate when I want to rent an apartment from somebody and I want to ask them whether I can smoke or not. So SMS is just great for that. So Airbnb recognizes that, and then we go to companies like Nexmo and Twilio and so on, and we buy the API and we pay the traffic, and that's great. So that global need to access capabilities in the telecom network through APIs, primarily messaging and voice, and in some cases billing, is there. But I think there's another side to it as well, is that there are great applications that are being built that solve real business needs. And, you know, as Dinesh said, people build these applications because they've got a business problem. And often it's not a developer who dreams up the application. It's somebody who says, well, wouldn't it be great if when somebody filled in a web form on a website and they clicked a button, my sales guy's phone would ring, and then I could get a call back and I could make the sale, and that, in this case that I'm talking about, is the Speak to Leads app, which is running on the Tropo platform. Now that has increased sales by 800% in the Speak to Leads case. Now that's an application that was built by a sales guy who's not a developer, but had a sales problem. So he got a guy, he worked with Tropo, he built this service. Now that service is running in the US, right? Now wouldn't it be great if we could take that service and run it in the Middle East, in Africa, in China? So what's the route to market? How do we get that service built by Speak to Leads guys running, say, on the AT&T network? How do we get that service to market in all these local operators? And so there it's kind of, you need a broker and you need to work with the operators, because they would be able to get that service to market for their particular SME customers. So there's the other challenge, and there's the opportunity. So there's one is the global thing, where you expose APIs to cloud players and app players and web players. And then the other opportunity is how we can take interesting applications and bring them to local markets with operators across the world. And so that's the sort of aggregation and brokering opportunity that we see going forward.
So from the panel, any other interesting app ideas based around telco APIs or communication capabilities you've seen in your travels around the world?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few. Actually, if I could poll the audience real quick, I mean, how many of you guys are using WebRTC or plan to use WebRTC in your hacks this weekend? Like, that's like over half of you. Yeah, I mean, so that's pretty incredible. I mean, that says something about where everyone's head is at. And I think it's important to point out here, right? I mean, you know, my fellow panelists here, they spent a lot of time talking, and appropriately so, about exposing, you know, telecom networks, right? But, you know, as we just proved, you know, most of you probably in your hacks today don't plan on using or plan on using WebRTC kind of over the top of these networks and maybe incorporating some telecom capabilities. So I just want to call out, you know, the second reason why we're all here is, you know, one thing is APIs. Yeah, I want to make a call as part of my app, or I want to send an SMS notification. But the other big part of why we're here, of course, is that, you know, these telco people, like I said before, have billions of customers. And, you know, for you guys as independent developers, it's not just about, hey, let me go use this big network from AT&T or this big network from Vodafone or from Orange or from whatever. It's, how do we get these guys to recognize that you guys are doing some cool stuff, and then get them to sell it for you, so that you can focus on features and not in acquiring users, right? Because they have a lot of users. That's what we've been trying to spend a lot of time doing. In terms of cool services, I'm going to take a quick second to call out the table over there in the corner, Guab. Diggs, raise your hand. So it's a bit of a shameless pitch here, but Diggs is our chief evangelist at Tropo, but he also has a nonprofit organization called Geeks Without Bounds. And so if you're not decided yet on what you're going to hack on, Diggs has lots of great ideas, not of his own, but coming from a funnel of people around the world who need smart people like yourselves to help solve global problems. Everything from hunger to disaster relief, tsunami reliefs. Like one cool hack that they did recently was wiring up a SIM-based module on an Arduino that you can put down into a well in Africa, and it measured the water levels. And then would broadcast out. So you can go to the well and literally subscribe over SMS to be notified when there was enough water in the well, because the problem is people travel 5 miles on foot, potentially in the desert or in bad conditions, only to find that there's no water. There isn't any clean water to be had. We're seeing a lot of really cool things, and there's revenue potential in these as well in solving these problems. So telemedicine and kind of social good stuff is really what gets us excited, pretty excited these days. And it's not just altruism. I mean, there's big money in solving these global problems too. And the good thing about the telecom networks, as opposed to the web or just pure WebRTC, is that they're ubiquitous. So you can put a GSM module in just about anything these days, wire it up to an Arduino, and solve some big problems. Yep.
No, that's excellent, Jose. So to open up to the audience, do we have any questions from the audience to the panelists? Okay, we have several. I'll go and grab your, if you could pass it back. Middle table and then to the back table.
I'm just curious to know, you call this telecom application developer. So how would you differentiate, if at all there's a differentiation between an ordinary application developer and a telecommunication application developer? Is there a different in mindset that you expect, or something like that?
You want to take that?
Yeah, there is definitely a different mindset. And this gets back to my earlier comments about cultures. What I found working at Oracle, there's usually the guys who do the network stuff are great at plumbing, and they're terrible at user interfaces. And the guys who do the web stuff are great at user interfaces, but they're terrible at plumbing. And so what I think the advantage we see here around API and WebRTC is we're adding a layer here where the web developer doesn't have to be as concerned about the plumbing. They just need to make the call into that network. You still have a place for the guys who do plumbing in the network side, and you still have a place for the guys that do UI or the web-based interface. Will those worlds come together? I know I'm a plumbing guy, so coming to the user interface, to me that's just a hard job to do. I'd rather go to someone who can do web development and offer them up my APIs so they can plumb and do the network stuff. I still see those worlds going down that path. You still have people that can build networks that have that network expertise, and then you have those guys who can do the web and have web expertise. But the advantage of a conference like this is it brings those two worlds together through an API interface or through a WebRTC interface.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Alan, probably,
Go for it, Mac.
probably you should describe this, because I have to describe your slide, right? So Alan, I'll describe Alan's slide. Alan has a slide in answer to that question. And it's basically a graph that goes like this. So it's the long tail, right? And the guys out here in the long tail, the iOS and Android developers, who essentially may have been offered an API from a telecom operator and some sort of developer environment on an operator's network. And essentially it was basically too hard, didn't work, there was too much process, couldn't work how they're going to get paid. So basically they the time is worth being spent on iOS or Android. So there's a lot of developers out here. And then there's some guys who kind of overlap between iOS and Android and what's going on in telecom. And then there are pure telco guys who are locked in the box, you know, who create the app, who build services on the IN. And that's the point is there's very few of those guys, and that's a specialist thing, and nobody wants to really go there. Doug can probably tell us more about that, right? But here with the API, it's now, actually the API is not really the key thing. It's like you can cut and paste the code. So now we can cut and paste code, drop it into the HTML, drop it into the app, and guess what? Press a button, send an SMS. Now, is that a developer? As Alan said, he's the cut and paste guy. I'm definitely the cut and paste guy. So we can build apps using code, cut and paste that. So who's the developer here? And so basically everybody. And more hardcore guys with specialist knowledge will be able to do it. So the point is it's making it really easy for anybody to integrate voice and messaging into the application. And that's the beauty of the API, and that's the beauty of the, you know, the web API coming from Tropo or Twilio or indeed Apidaze. So these platforms are just making it easier and easier to build telecom functionality into the app.
But it's not just a skills thing, though. I mean, you know, we can say that TADS and the motivation behind TADS is about kind of lowering the barrier to communications and make it about a skills and a knowledge thing. But for me, I mean, for me, TAD and the work that we're doing with Alan, it's more about that. It's you know, we want to create a community of people where communications is not just a feature, it is, you know, what we think about. And you know, there's a place for, you know, SMS APIs where, you know, I just, as part of my app, I need to use SMS to notify my users. That's communications as a feature. You know, me personally, I mean, I'm passionate about communications in general. Like, you know, connecting people, sharing ideas, collaborating in real time. You know, how do you get people closer together and feel that, you know, basically break down distances using technology? And you know, it used to be that was a very small core group of people in a very you know, secluded industry that could actually do that because it was all this, you know, gobbledygook of different technologies and blah blah blah. And you know, the exciting time that we live in now is that with WebRTC, we've basically broken down the barriers. Almost anyone can build a really cool communications app now, and you know, that's what, you know, TAD stands for to me.
Because I actually think Mark Shuttleworth in his Q&A and his keynote put it very well in terms of don't go where the headlines are, because that's already passé. Go where it is new ground, but also something that is exciting. And what we're hoping to do is, through all the people that are here, all the sponsors, they are very excited about communications, and this is breaking new ground in making these networks programmable so we can do amazing things in connecting people and applications and people. So that's why, you know, in the limit, yes, it all merges together. It's, you know, the web's one, it's all web development. But this is a new area and potentially provides a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement. And let's face it, hey, I'd love to sell a company for 19 billion.
Yeah, just would like to add that I agree with these developer segmentations, but for instance, we organize in Europe a lot of WebRTC meetups. And this, in the last 12 months, I think this frontier tends to be removed. Maybe at the beginning was more web people, but we get also more like telecom, like you were calling them plumbers, coming, but that would like to open up on these new technologies. Also some mobile developers, okay, maybe they have an idea of an app, but everything communicates very well together. And I think, yeah, what developers really want is like to know more about what they can build as a service. And what they like is that it's fast, okay? I can build a service, connect to Nexmo or Voxbone, and don't know anything about carrier environment or billing or setup or whatever. It's very fast, and that's what developers, because they open the API, and they say, I have one idea, now I have 5, 10, 20 ideas, and then they have always more ideas than less ideas. So they build services, and then they try to focus on one and then build a nice and a profitable service. So, but I think the this segmentation yeah, maybe it's converging to this center that Alan describes as telecom application developers.
We had a question at the back. Could you pass the mic? Or we lost? Oh, you got the mic. Great, go for it.
I have micro. This is Jaime from CSC. I would like to bring a topic about the standardization of the APIs. You know that telcos has failed to standardize APIs. I've been working 10 years in telco developing hosted services as Mac. I already said I am one of these specialists. And both SS7 and SIP networks, you know that they have different flavors and so on. And now with these new APIs based on REST, I think we are facing again the same problem. I think it would be good if you share your vision about standardizing the API so developers can bring solutions to different platforms without changing the code again and again, because it's not always about cut and paste the code. Sometimes the semantics are different and REST is not good enough. So could you share your vision about this?
Yeah, great question. And I share your angst and your annoyance at the industry here. I think one of the good news is around WebRTC, and why we see so much coalescing around WebRTC is that standard was produced by browser-based companies, or the W3C, and they used a more market approach to generate those APIs around JavaScript and the JSON interface, which I personally have high hopes. It's moving forward very quickly. Going back to the old APIs, we had WAP, we had WAC, we had Parley, we had ParleyX, we had Jane Slee, one I wrote, and then also you had one API out of the GSMA, and a whole mixed bag of these things. Now, what do you write? If it's not WebRTC, what are you writing to, and what's that standard? I guess the last one we left off with is ParleyX or one API, right? And I know that's what our platform is based on, but we're even frustrated there because what is that standard interface out there? Hopefully, maybe we'll move to the W3C and we'll see more standardization there for the non-WebRTC APIs. But I think, fortunately, for what we see around WebRTC, it is standardized there. We do see a lot of IoT operations there, and we have a lot more hope there. Now, as far as the other platforms, it's very interesting that on this panel here, if you notice, we're all competitors. Yet we're friends with each other because we all want the same thing. We want to see everyone be developed to these APIs, and we'd like to see even those APIs become standardized. Maybe we'll all get together and somehow produce a standard around those APIs. But you know, as far as the GSMA doing it or any other organization doing it, I know when I was doing it in Java, we had a very rigid, strict rules around Java, but just getting that into the industry was very tough.
Go for it, Jose.
Yeah, I'll be pretty quick, but I mean, I think what we're seeing, I mean, you know, to get a little geeky here for a second, since we're mostly coders here, I mean, I think what we've seen in a large part is a shift away from markup and more towards, you know, actual, you know, real code. You know, if you look at the web and you look at most non-trivial websites, right? I mean, they're becoming less and less, you know, HTML. And more JavaScript, right? So this notion of kind of declarative programming, I think, is more as we've seen a shift away from that, and I think WebRTC, you know, even further kind of exemplifies that. So in terms of standardization, so I, along with some other folks in the community, including Ben Klang and some of the guys from Mojolingo, we've created a protocol that we've developed originally based on XMPP, but now it can be tunneled over all kinds of other things called Rio, and we've submitted it as an open standard. So rather than try to standardize the API, we've created a kind of a super protocol that synthesizes everything from speech recognition to making calls to managing messages, and our entire platform is based on top of it. And we've open sourced this protocol in the hopes that other people create implementations, language bindings for it, and different APIs. Of course, you know, we've got a bunch of SDKs built on top of it already. But you know, I think to your point, I don't think there is one standard API. I think the best we can hope for is to start standardizing some of these protocols. Because you're right, there's an impedance mismatch in REST that doesn't map to the real-time world that we're all trying to tame. And I think the best thing that we can do now is just create some protocols to help with that. And then whenever the new flavor of the month comes along, Apple releases a new programming language, for example. We're not all debating about whether that's going to become the standard. I don't think people care anymore. There is no standard language, and that makes protocols even more important.
Oh, very good point.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the protocol is submitted under the XMPP Software Foundation for now, but we have some plans to move it to IETF or something else since it's not XMPP specific anymore. But yeah.
Cool, that's great. What I'd suggest is, because of time, we basically thank the panelists for an excellent discussion, and then we basically retire for lunch, and then at 1:30 we basically will be into 3 streams, and the agenda is over with Karen if you don't already have one, so you can work out where you need to be next. Okay, so again, let's thank the panel. Excellent discussion.